Good morning, psychology class. So this lesson is to help you with your assignment for week 2, which is we're still in chapter 3, but now we're moving on to kind of nature versus nurture. And so we're going to move on to section 3 of the text of chapter 3, which focuses on parenting styles and social development. So as we transition, if you need to go back and review what you did in week 2, by the way, you guys all did a fantastic job on your scavenger hunt. You did a really, really good job. I was very proud of you guys. So we focused on cognitive and emotional development. We looked at Piaget's stages of cognitive development and the process of how children begin to think and communicate. And so we're going to expand on that knowledge, specifically this week looking at the case of Jeannie, and we're going to look at how her language developed and how she started to be able to communicate. All right, and then obviously parenting styles comes into this development with children and social development, so we'll also examine that a little bit. All right, so the main focus here, and you guys did this on your scavenger hunt, is that children face various social decisions as they grow and progress through the stages of life. Okay, so let's start by looking at the different parenting styles. So there are 4 different parenting styles. The first one is authoritarian. And so families with this, the parents attempt to control, they shape, they evaluate the behavior and the attitudes of the children in accordance with a set code of conduct. Parents of in this style of parenting style, they may actually believe that the child has no right to question parental decisions. So they're very much the authority. They make the rules, they make the choices. And they don't necessarily believe that they have to explain those choices to their children. That is what it is. Then there is the democratic, authoritative families. These families, the children participate in decisions affecting their lives. And there's a great deal of discussion and negotiation in families. Parents tend to listen to their children's reasons for wanting to go somewhere. Or to do something, and they make an effort to explain their rules and their expectations to their children. And so this is with children, but as it moves into adolescence, adolescents get to participate in decisions that would affect their lives. All right. And then the other parenting style we have is the permissive family style, or also known as the laissez-faire. And this parenting style, children essentially have the final say. Parents are less controlling. They have a non-punishing kind of style. They accept attitude. It's an accepting attitude towards children. They may attempt to guide their children, but they give in when the children insist on having their own way. Or they may simply just give up their child-rearing responsibilities. So there's no rules about behavior, no demands, no voicing of expectations, virtually ignoring the young people in their homes. And the last parenting style is the uninvolved parents. These are self-centered in their child-rearing. Sorry, I guess I said that in the laissez-faire. On the last slide. So these are uncommitted to their role. They're distant from their child, and they kind of ignore the young people in their home, so they're uninvolved. So we have, just to review, we have authoritarian, all right, kind of like a dictatorship. It's my way or the highway. You have democratic or authoritative families where, there's discussion, there's rules, there's guidelines, but these guidelines and expectations are explained to the child to help them understand. Then you have permissive or laissez-faire, which is just kind of like, here's the rules. If you want to follow them, great. If not, there's no real consequences or anything. And then you have the uninvolved parents where the parents are really hands-off and uncommitted to their role, distant from their child. So this is a cool little chart here. This is not in your book. So this hopefully will help you in terms of understanding these 4 parenting styles we just talked about. So you can see the responsiveness versus low to high here. So authoritarian, there's a high behavioral control, and involved, there's really this low responsiveness, and then also low demanding. There's not very much demanding. Versus on the other side, the authoritative, which is also the democratic, there's a lot more warmth and supportiveness. There's also behavioral control. And then look down in the bottom right, you have laissez-faire down here. Again, there's warmth and supportiveness here, but the demand is pretty low. So you can kind of see how these boxes kind of, they fit into all of these. It is believed that socialization is the process of learning the rules of behavior of one's culture. And this is based on the culture in which the individual is born and will live in. And so it involves learning to live with other people as well as yourself. So socialization is really important for all of us, to learn the social rules and know what is acceptable and what is unacceptable. There's an example in the book that says some rules for boys in our society are different for the rules for girls. We tend to encourage boys to express aggression but not fear. And traditionally, girls have been raised to express emotions, but not ambitions. And then it says, of course, the rules for feminine behavior have changed over the years. So learning what the rules are and when to apply or bend them is, however, only one dimension of socialization. So every society has ideas about what's meaningful, valuable, worth striving for, and beautiful. And so this is just kind of shaping us to develop. And finally, socialization involves learning to live with other people and yourself. So anyone who has seen the shock of a 2-year-old's face when another child his age takes a toy he wants, or the frustration and humiliation of a 4-year-old who experiences that they're unable to hit a ball in the first try, they know how painful it can be to discover that other people have rights that you maybe don't, or that you have limitations within yourself. And so all of this is part of developing socially and understanding who we are. The book goes into talking about Freud's theory of psychosocial development. He suggests that all children are born with powerful sexual and aggressive urges, and learning to control these impulses, children ultimately acquire a sense of right and wrong in doing so. So these are just kind of the different stages that he pointed out. And so, yeah, you can see there is definitely a sexual component to this. They believe that while children don't knowingly express these, that they are moving through these, at least Freud does anyway. And so the first stage, the oral stage, is, the infant seeking pleasure from breastfeeding. And then having to be weaned off of that. The anal stage there between 1.5 and 3 years, this would be toilet training. And so the infant pleasures are seeking, they're centered around the functions of elimination of the bowel. The phallic stage, infant pleasure seeking is focused, they are here kind of focused more on their genitals. At this point, what's interesting that happens here is that the child becomes a rival for the affections of the parent of the opposite sex. So, for example, the boy would want to win his mother for himself and finds himself in conflict with his father, where the girl wants her father for herself and tries to shut out her mother. So again, these struggles are taking place on an unconscious level. They're not knowingly doing this, but it happens somewhere between the ages of 3 and 6. And generally, the child and the parents don't really have a clear awareness of what is going on. Then, at the same time that this is happening, there is a process called identification going on. And this is in this process of identification with the aggressor, the boy takes on his father's values and moral principles. At the same time, he learns to behave like a man. He internalizes his father's morality. His father's voice becomes the voice inside of him, like the voice of conscience. And the girl goes through this process and she begins to identify with her mother. She feels her mother's triumphs and her failures as if they were her own, and she internalizes her mother's moral code. So a lot happening there during that stage of phallic stage of ages 3 to 6. Then moving on into the latency stage, this is from 6 years on up to puberty. So Freud believes that sexual thoughts are repressed during this stage. The child focuses on developing social and intellectual skills here. And then lastly is the genital stage. And so this would be puberty through adulthood. So sexual desires are renewed again here, and the individual seeks relationships with others. And so today, relatively few psychologists believe that sexual feelings actually disappear in childhood. And so maybe they don't all believe with Freud's personality development as it's listed here, but they do all somewhat agree that there are some sexual feelings that are occurring during childhood, and they don't completely disappear. They just kind of reemerge in puberty. All right, so I kind of went through all of this. And then we're moving to another psychologist. So this is Erickson. This is his theory of psychosocial development, and that he suggests the need for social approval here is really important. So he's got his different stages here. So stage 1 would be trust versus mistrust. Stage 2, autonomy versus shame and doubt. Autonomy is choosing things for yourself versus being shamed into doing them or doubting yourself and not being able to follow through. Stage 3, initiative versus guilt. Stage 4, industry versus inferiority. Stage 5, identify versus role confusion. Stage 6, intimacy versus isolation. Stage 7, generativity versus stagnation. And stage 8, eco-integrity versus despair. And so if you look on page 84 in your book, there is a chart here that talks about what each of these stages are. So in stage 1, this trust versus mistrust, we're dealing with early infancy. So it's like, is my world predictable and supportable? In stage 2, the questions being asked here are, can I do things myself or must I rely on others? So again, autonomy versus shame or doubting myself. Stage 3, this is ages 3 to 6. This is, am I good or am I bad? You know, am I taking an initiative to do the right thing, or, you know, am I feeling guilty because I'm making bad choices? Am I good or am I bad? Stage 4, ages 6 through 12. Industry versus inferiority. Am I successful or am I worthless? So what is society telling me who I am? Stage 5, identity versus role confusion. So this is early teens. This is trying to figure out, who am I? What does that mean? Stage 6, intimacy versus isolation. This would be a young adult. This is somebody who's deciding, shall I share my life with someone or am I going to live alone? These are choices that we have to make. Stage 7, generavity versus stagnation. This is a middle adult. It's, will I succeed in my life? And how do I define being successful? And when I look back at my life, will I say that I lived a successful life? Did I generate something or did I get stagnant? And the last part, egocentric versus despair. This would be in an older adult and looking back on their life, wondering, did I in fact live a full life? And we all have to define those full lives by our own standards. So a full life for one person might mean something very different than a full life for another. So these are all stages of psychosocial development. And as you can see, it starts in early infancy with stage 1, and it goes all the way up through older adulthood, all the way to stage 8. And so we're constantly developing psychosocially throughout our entire lifetime.